the radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Wednesday, August 7th. Coming to you live from Barcelona. As you can tell, not home, not Puerto Rico, Barcelona. So we will be here for the next few weeks. So overall 6 weeks. So we'll be traveling a little bit. So you might get some alternative backgrounds. This is a condo, an apartment we've rented in Barcelona. But I fly to Frankfurt tomorrow. I might try to do a show while I'm in Frankfurt. And we will. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. I'm a little nervous about the internet connection, about the Wi-Fi. So we'll see how that goes. Today will be, if you will, our test run. If it doesn't work, we'll have to figure out other solutions for Wi-Fi. But we'll see. So far, so good. And then what else? Other than that, we're good. Other than that, now I don't know what the schedule is going to be. That's the other thing. Don't know what the schedule is going to be. We're going to play around with some times. I think this is a good time. It's dinner time in Barcelona, right? 8 p.m. East Coast time. Actually, no, the restaurants are still closed. Restaurants open at 8:30 p.m. for dinner. It's very difficult to get dinner before 8:30 p.m. I'm not going to play that game. I can't eat that late. I don't know how the Spanish do it. I don't know how other people do it. So I'll try to eat dinner before the show, and then do the show. So we will see. It's 8 p.m. here, but it's 2 p.m. East Coast time. So it's kind of the usual time that we usually do. So I expect this will be the time. But again, like for Frankfurt, I'll basically do the show when I have time, right, in between sessions, so at the end of the day, late at night. So we will see how it all evolves over time. But yeah, I'm in Barcelona. I manage with English somehow, and my wife speaks Spanish, and of course I live in Puerto Rico, so I know a little. I don't really know any Spanish, but I know a little bit, few words here and there, and I manage, and it's great. Barcelona is a beautiful city. It's most of the buildings around here, and I think the building we're in, either late 19th century or early 20th century. They have a particular style to them. It's not a modern style, but it's a very European, very early 20th century, 19th century style. It's quite nice. There are buildings here by the architect Gaudi. If you've ever seen, I don't know if you've ever seen, you can look them up online, Gaudi, the architect. Gaudi is the Dr. Seuss of architects. I think Dr. Seuss was inspired in his graphics by Gaudi's buildings. They are very crazy. They're completely insane. Not the kind of aesthetic, not my aesthetic, but certainly fun, in a sense of fun. I wouldn't invest in one of those buildings. I wouldn't want to live in one of those buildings. But I certainly appreciate the fun aspect of looking at them, I guess, from the outside. Although I'm curious to see inside. He's also famous for designing a massive cathedral here in Barcelona. It's been under construction for about 100 years. It is expected that it will be under construction for, I think, about another 20 or so. It's a Gothic cathedral with kind of modernistic Gothic kind of elements. I think, without a doubt, and I'm going to see it again. I haven't seen it yet at this trip. I'm going to see it again and maybe go inside. But without a doubt, I think it's the ugliest building ever built purposefully. But that's Gaudi. Anyway, it's an attraction. It's a huge tourist attraction. Barcelona's full with tourists. We have this apartment. The building is kind of early 20th century, I think, but inside is very modern. The apartment's very modern. But this is a quiet neighborhood, about 10 minutes walk to the touristy area, 10, 15-minute walk to the touristy area, which is packed. Indeed, the residents of Barcelona are complaining that there are too many tourists, and I've seen pictures and videos of them spraying people with water guns who they think are tourists, like attacking them with water guns, which is actually not a bad deal, given that it's hot and humid here, and getting sprayed with a little bit of cold water might actually be nice, not that bad. So what else can I tell you about Barcelona? Anyway, I'll tell you more as time here goes on. We've done our grocery shopping. We've kind of figured out the neighborhood. We found a few places to eat. So and we'll be exploring the restaurant scene here quite extensively. Barcelona is definitely a place for foodies, with lots and lots and lots of interesting restaurants and some great restaurants. Number one restaurant right now in the world is here in Barcelona. I'm on a waiting list, couldn't get reservations. So, but we will anyway. Lots of tapas, and really just fantastic food. So we will be checking out the food scene. We'll be doing 10,000 steps a day, I think, because a lot of walking. Uber doesn't work here, really. You have to kind of use an app to get a taxi. And what else? Don't have a car. There's no point in having a car here. But yeah, it's going to be fun. So a little different, change of pace, little change of pace. All right, but these shows are now back to the old days. You remember when I used to do shows at 8 p.m. East Coast time? Well, now I'm doing 8 p.m. Barcelona time, and this will be the time. Tomorrow, as I said, I'm flying to Frankfurt, so there probably will not be a show, though there's a chance that tomorrow night, after we've got this opening dinner at the conference, I might do a show from my hotel room. There we will see. The same Friday, same Saturday. We'll see if I can squeeze it in. And Sunday, I fly back here. Possibly I do a show on Sunday, but I'm not sure. And then next week, we'll get on a schedule for a while, and then we're traveling a little bit again. So anyway, the next few weeks, next couple of months, really, it's going to be a little haphazard in terms of what's going on. Okay, well, that's my update. And let's just jump into the news, because, God, there's a lot going on. And it's been quite a busy, dramatic weekend in a few days. A lot of the drama is about waiting. We'll get to that drama in a little bit. But we finally have Kamala Harris announcing her VP candidate, and it's the governor of Minnesota, of all people. Not somebody on the short list originally, certainly not on the short list I saw originally. He is Waltz, I think his name, Waltz. But he, I guess in the last week or so, suddenly popped up on the lists and suddenly started appearing as a possibility. I don't know. I don't understand politics. I don't understand their considerations. I don't understand what they're thinking. But as an outsider who doesn't really have much at stake here and is not particularly supportive of either, not at all supportive of either one of these candidates, I really just don't get it, right? I just don't get it. It seemed to me that you needed somebody from a swing state, somebody who could help at least win their state. The idea of getting somebody from Minnesota, she's got Minnesota. What's Minnesota going to go vote Republican? I mean, that's very, very unusual, very, very rare, and very, very unlikely. She's leading in the polls dramatically. Waltz is the governor of Minnesota. So it's very unlikely she loses Minnesota. She doesn't need help in Minnesota. Now, supposedly, he's a Midwestern. He was born in Nebraska. And he might be able to help in, I don't know, Michigan and Wisconsin, where she really needs to win. She certainly needs to win Michigan. But, that's pure speculation. He's a plain-speaking, working-class background type politician. And supposedly that is going to help her. I don't see it. I don't see it. She's given up. She's given up on the governor. She passed on the governor of Pennsylvania for a number of reasons we'll get to in a minute. But she needs Pennsylvania. She can't win. She can't win the presidency without Pennsylvania. I mean, that should have been the deciding factor. He's an incredibly popular governor. He's leading by, he won by 14 points, and he's more popular now than when he was elected. He should have been the slam dunk candidate. He should have been the guy she went with, and it really surprises me. It would be good for her to win Arizona, and she passed on the senator from Arizona. So I don't get it. To me, that should be the only thing that counts if I was running. Everything else should be secondary. The other thing that the senator from Arizona and the governor of Pennsylvania do for her is they are both real, not pretend, but real centrists. That's my light falling off. Let me try to replace it. We'll see how long that lasts. If it falls off, I know a way of sticking it on more solidly. They're both solid centrists, and it would have sent a clear message that she is moving to the center. She is going to be lambasted and attacked by Trump, to a large extent justifiably, as being and supporting real leftist causes, way out there on the left. She has a reputation of being tough, probably not being too friendly to Israel. And I think what she really needed to shore up is not her left. Where's her left going to go? The left's not going to go anywhere. What she really needed to shore up is the center and moderate Republicans. I think Shapiro in Pennsylvania and Kelly from Arizona could have done that. Could have shored up the Never Trumpers or the independents or the swing voters, the people who are not sure, who she needs. Walz does not do that. He is a leftist. He is a progressive. He is from a progressive state, Minnesota. He was governor when the riots happened in 2020. He did not exactly exude law and order, right? He is known as being quite progressive in his attitudes, and it doesn't give her anything. Now, rumors have it that she didn't pick Shapiro from Pennsylvania because he's, quote, too ambitious. She was afraid he would try to undermine her, undercut her, try to steal the spotlight and promote himself. Now, maybe there's something there, and surely you want to pick a VP candidate that you get along with, I guess, although I don't know how often the president sees the vice president, so I don't know how important that is. But Walz is probably more subservient, would be more subservient, and I think ultimately that was the consideration. But it's kind of a super dumb consideration if you're in a tight race and one candidate has a huge advantage over the other in terms of winning, which should be the only thing that matters to these people, you'd think. Maybe not, I guess. So anyway, Walz is the VP candidate. Kamala has done very well in the polls so far. I haven't seen any polls post-announcement of the VP candidate, but I'm sure it didn't help her. It didn't add anything to her poll standing, whereas I think Shapiro or Kelly would have actually helped her. We're going into the Democratic convention soon here, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see how all this gets positioned and whether Kamala can win, whether Trump can win, how Trump responds, whether there's a debate. There's still back and forth about whether there's going to be a debate. Trump won't do a debate on Kamala's terms. Kamala won't do a debate on Trump's terms. So far, right as of now, there's no debate. We will see where all that lands up. But Kamala right now is leading Trump in some of the swing states. She's doing much better than Biden. But I can't say, I mean, even though you guys know how anti-Trump I am, oh God, Kamala is terrible. She's terrible. I mean, she's very left on most important issues. And as I've said for a long time about her, she's very much a power luster. And this decision about the VP shows, I think, a real lack of judgment and a real lack of political acumen. I think it's acumen. Again, I think, right, given my understanding of the way these kind of political decisions get made. So that is kind of domestic politics. We're in this, we're heading into the Democratic convention. She'll get a bump from that, and then Trump is just gonna lay into her and going to try to crush her and demoralize her, and it will really boil down to the perception that these two candidates, neither particularly liked. Trump is hated by many, but I'm not sure that the people who hate Trump are going to vote for Kamala. I don't know. We will just have to see how it all plays out. And usually, my guesses about who wins presidential elections are wrong anyway, so I wouldn't make too much of them. Yep. All right. Let's see. MSNBC said she should have chosen Shapiro. Ooh. MSNBC said that. That's pretty weird that MSNBC should say that. MSNBC is more left than most of the other channels. But yeah, I think they know what's going to get you elected and what's not. And what Kamala needs in order to get elected is people to the right of her. People, people who are moderate Republicans who don't want to vote for Trump, or independents who don't want to vote for Trump, but don't want to vote for a leftist ticket either. They're not leftists. And choosing Shapiro would have just sent a signal, a message that we're not going to govern from the far left. The problem is that she probably didn't choose Shapiro because of Israel, because he's too pro-Israel for her. Waltz is also pro-Israel, but likely to take a back seat to whatever Kamala Harris proposes, promotes, endorses. I don't think he's independent when it comes to issues like foreign policy. All right. The base is going to turn out anyway. So dumping Biden and switching to her was a way to appease the base. That's what got the base. But all right. Let me one more time try this. All right, let's see if that'll hold. The light keeps dropping. Oh, maybe that won't hold. תשימי קצת מים. All right, let's do this. I'll just do it from the bottom. All right. So, yeah, what was that? You owe me now, Rusty Ginsburg. What the hell is Rusty doing here? Rusty isn't here. Oh, there he is. He was gifted a membership. He's not even there. No, there he is. He's there. He said thanks. You can't gift to somebody who's not on. It's the gifting only goes for people who are on. Anyway, half of you don't know what I'm talking about. All right, so that's Waltz. That's Kamala. We'll just see what happens. One more on kind of quickly domestic politics before we get to the riots in the UK. And that is talk about the far left. And of course, this should have been a message to Kamala. She should have realized this. But a second squad member, the squad is like, 8 congressmen, women who are wacky left. The squad is wacky left. AOC is probably the most well-known member of the squad. But probably the second most well-known member of the squad is Cori Bush. And Cori Bush just lost in a Democratic primary in a St. Louis district. She lost to a Democrat in the Democratic primaries. This is a solidly Democratic district, so whoever wins the primary is going to be a House member. But the person who's replacing them, I guess, prosecuting attorney Wesley Bell, St. Louis District Attorney Wesley Bell, is not a member of the squad, is not wacko left. Also, now that, as we said, this is the second squad member of 8, it's like a quarter of them, who has lost recently, a recent primary to a more moderate a Democrat. The first one was Bowman, right? I forget what his first name is, but something Bowman, who lost in both primaries. It looks like the deciding factor was a huge inflow of money from AIPAC. AIPAC, what does it stand for? Alliance for something, Israel, something. Anyway, they put in, they have committed $100 million primary candidates against squad members and beating them. And so far, it's been incredibly successful with two now. I think the fundamental is here, Americans are not far left. Even Democrats, even people who regularly vote Democratic, are not far left. And I think what you're seeing is, people are voting, they're voting for non-far left candidates. And that's basically what's happened here. And this is a continuing trend. School boards kicking people off of the school boards because they'd gone too far to the left. It is common. It has happened in, he was, defund the police and too left. America will not support a far left. And I don't think she's that smart. And I don't think, she's good at manipulating the system. She's good at getting ahead. She's just not that smart, and she's not good at basically strategizing. So I think 3 cheers for defeating the squad in Congress, for getting rid of them. They're a bad influence. They're bad for the Democratic Party, but they're really awful for America, and their distraction and the vicious political news out there is the squad is invested in defeating the squad. All right, so now I'm buffering, you're telling me? What is that? He says I'm buffering. Are you guys seeing buffering as well? Yeah, I don't know how to... yeah, it's 1280 by 800. 1280 by 800. Yeah, this is what I was afraid of. Maybe camera off, just audio. 86 the video. Can you, do I know the bit rate? The Wi-Fi here is just not that stable. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't give me, I don't see where the bit rate. BPS, should I lower that? It's OBS, yes, it's in OBS. It's 1600 kbps. Lowered it to 1000. Yeah, it's not the, I've loaded to 1000. So does that make any difference? Yeah, it's still buffering. Yeah, this is exactly what I was afraid of. Let's see. Fast. All right, 1000 kbps didn't seem to help. I would think low. I don't know. Try this. All right, so that's a squad. Let's move on. I did lower the kbps to 1000. Let me know if this helps, and if not, Wonder Freeman says try 400. If not, I'll lower to 400. All right. big story out of the UK is the ongoing riots in the UK. And, it's a huge story. It's got to the point where I guess Elon Musk is claiming the UK is on the verge of a civil war, which I think is a massive exaggeration. But that is Elon Musk arguing, there's going to be a civil war. So we talked about this last week, but so let me just recount some of the facts, and then we'll go from there. There was this a week ago, there was this awful attack on I guess a dance class where 3 young girls under the age of 8, I think it was, were killed, and another number of girls were injured. So this was just horrible. The assailant was arrested, and the police refused to identify him, refused to give his name, and refused to give who he was, what he was, or anything like that. The internet blew up with rumors, a number of big names on. Right. And so the rumors spread that this was a Muslim who had attacked these girls. And immediately in the town in which this happened, a working class, very working class, old. This is a place where in the old days, 70s and pre-70s, a lot of the people there worked in the mines, worked in manufacturing. A lot of those jobs are gone. So they started riots there, and particularly in a Muslim area, attacked the mosque, burned a police car, attacked the police. And these riots started spreading to other typically working class white or mixed towns, but among whites, and they started to spread across the UK. Supposedly, in response to this, some Muslims got together and organized, their own squads that went out on the attack and were aggressive. So their own gangs started going around, again, burning places down, riots, burning places down, attacking the police, attacking people of different color, skin. And now, last week, and I think we talked about this, it was reported finally a judge stepped forward. Now, the reason the police didn't provide any info is because this evil bastard who'd killed the girls was underage. He was 17. And in England, there's a law where you don't disclose the name of the person if they're a minor, which is under 18. But a judge, because of the riots and because this guy is going to turn 18 soon, basically disclosed the name, and it came out that he wasn't a Muslim. He was from African origin. His parents are from Rwanda. He has a very non-Muslim name. The funny thing is that the days before that, not only did they say it was a Muslim, they gave his name. They said where he was from. They claimed he had been under watch by MI6 or MI5 or whatever, the internal security in England. So they already identified him, gave him a profile as suspicious, and why wasn't he? He was an illegal immigrant. He'd just come in. And it was all made up. The whole thing was made up, right? Anyway, it came out that the guy is not an immigrant. He was born in Wales, right? His parents are immigrants. They came from Rwanda, but they came from Rwanda 20 years ago. He was born in England, went through English schools, and did this horrific, violent thing. And as I described it last week, it struck me as probably the kind of kid that does school shootings in the United States. Anyway, the riots did not stop. The riots shifted from anti-Muslim riots to anti-immigrant riots. And even though, again, he is not an immigrant, his parents are, but it turned into basically white English, white Brits, rioting against people of color, some of whom have lived in the United Kingdom for a very long time, all in the framework of an anti-immigration agenda. Now, I think to really understand this, the anger, and there's no question, these people are angry, they're frustrated, they're hateful, and even though the people rioting are mainly young, thuggish, small groups, this is not a majority of Brits, even in these towns and even in these neighborhoods. It does definitely represent an underlying anger and frustration and disappointment and that is being experienced in England. We saw it in the last election, which had the lowest turnout in the election in over 100 years, and that brought to power a government that got a minority of the votes, but an overwhelming majority of the seats, all in an effort just to vote against the Conservative Party, who most voters held responsible for the situation, but didn't really love Labour either. So many of them, many of them stayed home. And then, of course, also manifested itself in the success, at least in terms of the percentage that they got at the ballots, not so much number of members of Parliament, but the percentage of the votes they got of the Reform Party, Nigel Farage's party. Nigel Farage, by the way, has done almost nothing to quell these riots, quite the opposite, has in many respects flamed the fire, whatever you call it. So what's going on? So what's really going on is that I can't change the video to 640, 40, while it's playing. I can try in the future, but I've changed the bit rate to 500, but there's not much else I can do while the show is going on, except just turn off the video completely. But let's see how this goes. It doesn't look anywhere near as bad as it was before, so hopefully it's better in terms of the streaming. What's going on? I think you have to first understand the economic position that the UK is in. The economic position is, first, London, outside of London, the UK economy is struggling. People outside of London are fairly poor, certainly in an American sense, and even in a European sense, they're fairly poor. GDP per capita income outside of London among Brits is not very high. If you look at the success of the UK economy, certainly over the last 15 years, to the extent that there's been any success, it's all been in London. Indeed, you could argue that there's been a massive brain drain from rural England, from small town England, from the cities and towns all over the UK to London. People have left and moved to London. So you definitely have a massive brain drain that has really cost the British economy outside of London. Now, this is a phenomenon that is also clear in the United States. Small town America has not necessarily done well, whereas the cities many cities have thrived. One of Freeman said Dublin has doubled the GDP per capita. Dublin's GDP per capita is not very indicative of how the Irish do. I mean, they do well to a large extent because they deregulated and privatized and freed up their economy in a significant way. Ireland is one of the freest economies. So, certainly in Europe, but globally, it's one of the freest economies. But the GDP per capita in Ireland is skewed by the fact that a lot of corporations have headquarters in Ireland. So a lot of revenue is produced, even though it's not produced in Ireland, it flows through Ireland. And a lot of that money is somehow captured in the GDP number. corporate profits are captured in GDP numbers, but the corporate profits are not from Ireland, and the money is not spent in Ireland. So the Irish numbers are a little off. GDP generally is not a great number, but the number in Ireland is not really off. But the reality is that the UK is struggling. It's struggling because it's basically over the last 10 years, 15 years, has abandoned the free market policies that really turned the British economy around under Margaret Thatcher. It has, while London has benefited from a service economy, from an economy built on finance and consulting and insurance and things like that, and from strong connections to Europe in the pre-Brexit era, the rest of the country, which had been dependent very much on mining, that was killed by Thatcher, and that died, and had to die, and it needed to die because it was just not economic. And manufacturing, which again is not economic in the UK, is struggling, and the economy is not free enough, and there's not enough incentives, and there are too many regulations, and as a consequence, you haven't seen entrepreneurs and new innovation and new businesses and the kind of entrepreneurial activity that you see in the United States, and even in a country like Sweden has a lot more entrepreneurial activity than the UK does. And the reason is that Sweden, it's much easier to start a business, it's much easier to run a business, far less regulated than the UK or, for that matter, the United States. Taxes might be high, but in other respects, Sweden is freer than both the UK and the US. So in terms of economic freedom, the UK has gone down. But one of the things the UK still had going for it was its relationship with Europe. It had this free trade agreement where free trade, free capital, and free movement of people with Europe, which was enormously beneficial for the UK. It allowed it to build up a financial industry. It allowed it to build up this insurance has always been a stronghold, the financial industry, and other industries that allow it to have some manufacturing, because that manufacturing could sell into Europe with zero tariffs, as if they were on the mainland. And there is absolutely no question in my mind that overall, Brexit was a massive benefit for the UK economy. Now, it could have been better, right? You know, if you could get the free trade, a free movement of capital, free movement of people, and have less regulation. Remember, being a part of the EU means you are burdened by all this regulation. Then, you know, it's absolutely that would have been a much better deal. There's no question. And indeed, some of the Brexiters argued that that's what they were going to establish in the UK, that they were going to maintain free trade and free movement of capital and even, you know, labor, not so much, but everything else they were going to maintain or expand even by free trade agreements with other parts of the world and turn the United Kingdom into a free trade island. Yeah, I was skeptical from the beginning, but that's what they promised. And so, you know, so the idea of Brexit was we'll get all the benefits of free trade, but we'll be able to get rid of all the regulations that the EU has imposed on us. And so the Conservative Party, who you know, the British people voted for Brexit. I believe that a big part of the vote for Brexit had to do with anti-immigration sentiments that you're seeing right now, and with xenophobia, and with nationalism, and with the resentment of all the immigrants, particularly Eastern European immigrants who were coming into a lot of Poles and so on. Anyway, the Conservative government negotiated a Brexit. They got out of the European Union, and they promised that they were going to get rid of all the regulations that were burdening the Brits, so that they could become this free trade island without the regulations and have, you know, a free market and really become successful. And of course, they didn't. So Brexit turned out to be this massive fiasco. No free trade, no new free trade deals, no big ones. No deregulation. Almost all the regulations that the EU imposed on Great Britain as part of the EU are still there, are still in place. They kept them. So no deregulation. No free trade. No free trade deals. loss of free trade and free movement of capital with the EU. And on top of that, the UK still brings in massive quantities of immigrants, because the reality is that there's still work to be done. There's still jobs. And either the Brits don't want to do those jobs, just like in America, the Brits don't want to do those jobs, or there are not enough of them to do them, because Brits, like most Europeans, are not having a lot of kids. And so the immigrants are still coming at record numbers. Last year was a record year in terms of immigration, net migration into the UK. It's just now the migrants are, from the perspective of the Brits, worse. Because if before the migrants were like Eastern Europeans, they had the same color skin. Now, the migrants are not Eastern Europeans. There's no free movement of labor. So instead, they're coming in from the old British colonies. It's a huge migration from Nigeria, from Pakistan, from India. A lot of Muslims entering into the UK. Can't have Poles, can't have Czechs, can't have Europeans, I don't know, Serbians, whatever. So let's get people from Africa and Asia. And many of them are Muslims. So they're getting this massive increase in migration, which now irks the British even more than it used to. Not only is it perceived that they're taking the jobs, of course they're not, these are jobs that the Brits don't want to do, but it's also perceived that they're bringing in a different culture, which to some extent they are, and certainly that they all have different color skins. And this is very upsetting to the Brits. And by the way, I think this is part of the origins of Brexit to begin with, that is this nationalism, xenophobia. And now, so all of that is now on steroids. On steroids. Whatever led to the Brexit kind of xenophobia, that to some extent led to Brexit, now that xenophobia is on steroids, leading to riots. And this is driven by economic frustration and by hatred of migrants. And the economic frustration is a consequence of a conservative government that we have now a Labour government, but the conservative government who ruled until a few weeks ago, conservative government that didn't do anything it promised except get Brexit done, but didn't liberate, didn't deregulate, didn't free up the economy, created a COVID fiasco, like most countries in the West. It spent massively during COVID, created inflation. Cost of living in the UK has just gone like that. The UK has been in a recession, probably maybe is out of a recession now, but still struggling. But really the last 10 years or more, the UK economy has struggled. Really since the great financial crisis, since 2008. So what's that? 16 years now. Wow, 16 years. Stagnation is not good. Stagnation is in many ways walking backwards. Because when the economy stagnates, it means wages are not going to increase dramatically because productivity is not increasing. It means that the wealthy are staying wealthy, but the poor are not getting ahead. They're not seeing improvement, which leads to incredible frustration. Indeed, stagnation is on average. So if zero is the average, then what you get is some parts of the economy are doing well, others are doing poorly. Those who are doing poorly are going to get super frustrated. And then they see their neighborhoods being taken over by people of a different color skin, immigrants. Many of those immigrants, as we know, are getting special favors, special government grants. They're also, and this is the most disgusting thing that's happening in Europe generally, UK maybe worse than any other place, and this is the worst, is that the migrants, particularly the Muslim migrants, especially the Muslim migrants, are getting not only special treatment in terms of social services and welfare and stuff like that, But the worst part of it is they get special services on the part of the police. That is, in the UK we know that the police do not prosecute Muslims the way they prosecute regular Brits. They are culturally sensitive. They're afraid of being called racists. So they go out of their way to turn a blind eye to crime and to horrific things that these Muslim communities actually do. I mean, maybe the most horrific part of this are the grooming gangs, which we've been talking about for years now and have been well publicized in the British press for years now. And the rumors are, at least from what I've read, it's still going on. That is, these are Pakistani and Bangladeshi, primarily Muslim men who groom young girls and then gang rape them. And the girls are typically British, white, or Sikh. Sikh is a religion in India that is obviously looked down upon by the Muslims. And they gang rape them. And the police turns a blind eye to it. Now, this happened, I don't know, 20 years ago and continued for a while. And then there was a big scandal about 10 years ago. And a bunch of these grooming gangs were rounded up and sent to jail. But rumors have them, at least from what I read, and I don't know, I'm not in England, so I don't know the truth of it. Rumors are that they still happen. And the police still turns a blind eye to them. Which is just, it's unthinkable in terms of how disgusting it is. So you can imagine that if you're a Brit and you're living in these communities and there are these Muslims over there, and these Muslims are not assimilating, they're not integrating, and they're above the law in certain respects. They're getting special treatment. And by the way, the special treatment encourages them not to assimilate. Because the reality is that previous generations of Indians and Pakistanis and Muslims from other parts of the world have assimilated into British society. But the last, I don't know what it is, 20, 40 years, they haven't. And that, I suggest, is the cost of multiculturalism. Multiculturalism prevents assimilation. Multiculturalism declares, oh, no, don't assimilate into our culture. Your culture is just as good. If you have rape as part of your culture, who are we to judge you? I mean, nobody will actually say that aloud, but that's how they're acting it out. And it is that placing these people and allowing them to be above the law, which is so unbelievably horrific. You know, remember when ISIS, about 10 years ago, when ISIS was recruiting members from Europe, and young men and women were going to join ISIS in Syria, more Muslims from the UK went over to ISIS than from anywhere else. So UK has radical Islamist preachers, churches. They just put one of them in jail, which is good, for the rest of his life. But they've had them for decades. I remember after 9/11, there were preachers hailing, and advocating for jihad and demonstrations in London advocating for jihad. And of course, we saw what happened after October 7th in London in terms of the advocacy of the Muslim communities all over England. They are unabashed Islamists. And the British government, under Conservatives, didn't care, didn't do anything about it. Nothing. Zero. Zilch. And under Labour, is certainly not going to do anything about it. So while I am, about as anti-xenophobia and anti-racism and anti-collectivism and anti-nationalism as one can be, you can understand the frustration of the British when these people are above the law, when these people express, real hatred for Britain, real hatred for Western civilization, real hatred for the values of the West. And the government and the police, they just shrug, they don't care. And there's no attempt to assimilate. and there's no advocacy for assimilation, and they're just left alone. And now, if the economy is doing well, first of all, I think assimilation would increase. But if the economy was doing well and these people felt like their life was going well and they had a progress and they were increased productivity and therefore increasing wages and things were being, they as individuals were being successful in life, I don't think they would hold quite as much anger and resentment. But if you add the economic stagnation, the resentment that comes from economic stagnation, and the fact that people who feel that way look for scapegoats. They look for scapegoats. Historically, Jews were a great scapegoat for stagnation. Now, it's foreigners more broadly, and Muslims. And in the case of Muslims, you get this added thing, which is now justified. All this other stuff is not. You get other stuff that is justified, which is the fact that they perceive themselves as above the law, and in some cases they really are. They get all these benefits, and they are openly hateful of Western civilization. And again, I'm generalizing. There are many, many, many Muslims in the UK who are assimilated and who completely embrace Western civilization. But there are enough of them who have not. And most of those who have not live in these small cities, towns, all over, primarily industrial England, in the south and in the north of London. I think what you get is a lot of assimilation in London and a lot of non-assimilation outside of London. And, this is tragic. It's tragic. Because it could be very different. First of all, if the UK had stayed part of the European Union, it would have had a lot of migration, but migrants who are non-Muslim. And a lot of Muslims have already entered England even during that period, but a lot less than are entering right now. But I also think the economy would have done better if it stayed stayed in the European Union. It wouldn't have been great. It still would have been just a little bit over stagnation, but it would have been better. There's no question. Brexit has really hurt the UK economy. Really hurt it. And it's hurting it much more. And I know some of you in England listening to me, you remember I came to London, I said, yeah, Brexit is great if they do XYZ. But the likelihood that they do XYZ is very close to zero. And if that's true, Brexit sucks. And the reality is now, how many years after Brexit? Brexit sucks. It was a massive mistake. A massive mistake. And now you got a Labour Party who is not going to deregulate. They are doing the exact opposite. They're nationalizing the railroad. They're going to nationalize. They're going to increase the power of unions. They're going to spend more money on the NHS. They're going to destroy the UK economy even more. And you still have Brexit. So you still don't have free trade, and you still have no free movement of capital. And I don't know what they're going to do about migration. I don't know what they're going to do about migration. The fact is the NHS has a massive shortage of people. Nurses, doctors, what do you call them? Just people who clean hospitals and just do the kind of work in the hospitals that nobody wants to do. Who's going to staff the hospitals if the NHS has to expand? NHS has always been a money hole, a money drain. But who's going to staff the hospitals? So, are they going to find Brits to do it? They're going to raise wages, but they can't afford to raise wages. And it's just bankrupt. So they're going to have to, orderlies, janitors, thank you, Kudabaya, Baba. So they're going to have to find migrants to do it. Anyway, England's a mess. It really is a mess. I don't know how much, and those of you who live in London can say on the chat, how much you feel it in London right now. From what I'm reading, the riots are all outside of London. And the riots continue day in, day out. And again, Muslim gangs are now forming to challenge the the gangs on the other side, and it's getting out of hand. The Labour Party has committed to increasing policing and putting the rioters in jail, primarily again, and the perception at least is that the primary focus is on the British rioters, the non-Muslim British rioters, and the focus is not on the Muslim rioters. The Muslim rioters, again, are perceived to be at least above the law. I don't know if that's true, but that's the perception. And that perception only fuels the riots even more. The solution, of course, is freedom. The solution is economic freedom. It's not build walls. It's not, kick out all the migrants, although I do think Islamists should be identified, those who advocate for totalitarian Islam, those who are preaching Islamism, they should be kicked out of England, they should be deported. The solution is freedom. Freedom will lead to economic prosperity, economic growth. Freedom would lead to Brits feeling wealthier, feeling more confident in the future, increasing their own productivity and their own income. It'll increase their own self-esteem. I think when you're not making a good living, self-esteem suffers as well. So the solution, without a doubt, is economic liberty, which includes migration, which includes maybe even more migration. But migration motivated by work, and freedom also entails and requires, in my view, the rule of law. That is a commitment by law enforcement in the United Kingdom to deal with criminals, justly, and deal with criminals no matter where they are. That is, no matter what their origin is, and to deal with Muslim violence harshly and without any compromise. That's what the UK needs. And now I can guarantee you that the labor market will not make that commitment. It will not make that commitment vis-a-vis rule of law. It is committed to multiculturalism, which is only going to make things worse, and is committed to to statism, to greater government involvement in the economy, which will make things worse. So things are bad right now in the UK. There's a good chance that over the next few years, they're going to get worse. And I used to be super optimistic on the UK because I really thought, I think wrongly, that you remember when Johnson won that big majority, I thought there was a chance that they would liberalize the economy. I really thought, going back to 2010, after the great financial crisis, I really thought there was a chance that because conservatives in England were secular, because conservatives in England seemed to be pro-free markets, because conservatives not in the UK, not in America, in the UK, secular seemed to be pro-free markets, and because my impression of young people in the UK was that they were far better educated than in the United States, that maybe it was the UK where things would start changing, where things would start moving in the direction of a Thatcher. And I think I interacted a lot with the Adam Smith Institute in London, and they were very optimistic in those days about the future of the UK, what the government was going to do, how pro-capitalist, pro-markets the government actually was. They turned out to be wrong. But at the time, they were incredibly optimistic. And I was. And no, it's all gone bad. It's all gone bad. All right, since we're on depressing topics, the United States, you've seen the stock market, I guess, over the last few years. It's really a global phenomena, but it really emanates from the U.S. Stock market in the United States has taken a massive plunge. And in the last 2 days, it's up, but at the end of last week, it took a significant plunge. And there's more and more talk in the United States about a recession. about the U.S. entering a recession. It wouldn't surprise me. As many of you know, I've been kind of talking up a recession, that we're heading towards a recession for 3 years now? So I've been expecting one. My timing is a little off, a lot off. But it wouldn't surprise me if we're heading now in a recession that is kind of, in many respects, should have happened already. The economy seems to be slowing. Unemployment is going up. A number of jobs being created is going down. So the U.S. Economy is slowing. It's partially, I think, related to kind of a global slowdown. The Chinese economy is a mess. We've talked about it often. The real estate collapse, but also China is engaged in massive industrial planning, I'd say in particular over the last 15 years since the great financial crisis. And that industrial planning is hitting it's a dead end. It's going nowhere. So China has massive capacity to manufacture stuff that nobody wants and nobody needs and nobody's willing to pay for. The Chinese themselves can't buy it. They can't sell enough overseas. Their companies sell stuff at the loss, so the company is losing money. And all of this is adding up to a major economic disaster in China, which is spilling over to the rest of the world. And I think you're seeing the United States heading towards a recession, Japan heading towards a recession, China certainly heading towards a recession, might already be in a recession. For all we know, we don't really have good stats. And the rest of the world could be heading in that direction as well. And I think that's what we're seeing with the big movements in the stock market in the last few days, not just in the United States, but kind of in global markets as well. I don't know where the market is heading from here. I don't know if that was just a blimp last week and it's going to recover. It's already recovered some for the last 2 days. I do know that there's nothing good. There are no positives if you look at the global economy. China's a mess. The United States is a mess and has been for a while. And we're not going to get anything better no matter who wins. If Kamala wins, we'll just get the same Biden policies of industrial planning and more government intervention and greater regulations and more antitrust. And if Trump wins, we'll get a bunch of tariffs, which is basically a massive tax increase on Americans and on productive Americans. And it's going to be, we're also going to get regulations in certain areas, deregulations in other areas. We will definitely get industrial planning, Trump style, as compared to Democratic style, but still industrial planning. And then in Europe is stagnating. Germany is still in a recession, is struggling to get out of recession. Its main industries have now been overtaken by China, and the Chinese are just selling. I've talked to you about the EV market and how they're dominating that market, and they're going to dominate it globally. But it's batteries, it's solar panels, but it's also high-end manufacturing, which used to be dominated by German companies, is now, China is doing very well in it. So we're seeing elements of global recession that'll hit the United States has a potential to hit the United States pretty hard. We're heading towards difficult times, I think. And it's not surprising. Again, good times are a result of liberty, the result of freedom, the result of free markets. And nobody out there is advocating for free markets. No political party is a free market political party. There's no energy behind free markets. And yet the lack of free markets is killing economic progress in the West and in the East, in China. China moved away from semi-free markets into industrial planning on a massive scale after the financial crisis. And it's only intensified under Xi. And it's only going to make China's attempt to get economic growth going again more and more and more difficult. So things are tough in the UK, and they're going to get tough in the United States. And you could see, particularly if we're heading into a recession in the next few months, you could see a lot of the frustration that is animating the Brits could easily animate the Americans to vote for Trump and to give us a second Trump administration. And I know some of you are probably cheering that on, but it's not a good thing. It's not that a Kamala administration is a good thing either, but it's not a good thing that the best we can hope for is Trump. That's pretty bad. All right, so that's kind of the market sell-off yesterday. I think it's going to be tough for the markets, primarily because I think that the market has been evading China for a long time now. They've assumed that these tech companies just go like this, irrespective of what's going on in China. But the reality is that they can't. Reality is that China is a big enough economy that as it starts sputtering and really having a hard time, that's going to affect global markets. It's going to affect the ability of tech companies to sell. It's going to affect the supply chains. It's going to have an impact all over the place. I mean, one of the things that hit Apple is the fact that Apple is having a hard time selling iPhones in China. It used to be the dominant phone in China, and it's not anymore, and it's sinking, and the reason is that it's expensive. And the Chinese produce decent phones. And why would the Chinese embrace an iPhone when it's expensive and they can get something from their local phone manufacturers at a significantly lower price with very similar features? So Apple is going to struggle against Chinese production in China as the Chinese economy struggles, and people are looking for bargains. They're not looking for the status symbol that I think for many an Apple represented in the Chinese market. So again, in every respect, economically, China matters. The United States is struggling. I mean, you saw Intel. We talked about this, I think, on Friday. Intel laid off 1,500 people. Intel just got a massive subsidy from the Biden administration. When will people learn? When will the world learn? When will anybody learn? The subsidies are the problem, not the solution. They are the problem, not the solution. They never are the solution. But that's the road the United States is going down, the road of subsidization, industrial planning. Instead of looking at China and seeing, oh, that's what industrial planning does. It completely distorts the economy, completely perverts incentives. It completely ruins an economy. Maybe we shouldn't do it. Instead, the United States is looking at China and saying, oh, no, we need to compete. How are we going to compete with subsidies and with industrial planning and with all the stuff the Chinese did that failed? That's how people, bizarre. All right, let's see. Let's do a couple of foreign policy, not foreign policy, but international, global stories. UK is global too, but we'll start with the Middle East. So everybody's expecting a war in the Middle East, a big one, a major war between Israel and Iran and Hezbollah, Lebanon. And it hasn't happened yet. And everybody's sitting on pins and needles. The Israelis are waiting for the missiles to be launched. We talked about this on Friday, and I talked again on Sunday on my show in Hebrew, how ridiculous that is, that if Israel's convinced that the Iranians are going to attack, it is a moral, what they should do morally. It is a moral imperative to the extent that there are imperatives in objectivism. No, but it is required of them morally to engage in a preemptive strike. You don't wait for them to kill Israelis in order to do something. So Israel's just sitting on its hands, waiting, the suspense. You can imagine Israeli citizens waiting to see if the missiles are heading their direction or not and what will happen. Last time, of course, there were no casualties, but there was one little girl, an Arab Bedouin girl who got seriously injured. Actually spent 2 months in a coma. I think she came out of the coma and she's doing okay now. But, that was the only victim. But you never know. And as I've explained many times, Hezbollah is a completely different animal because their missiles are so short range. And they can from firing to landing, it takes very little time, right? And as a consequence, very difficult to defend against. So Israelis are waiting. They're not preempting. They're attacking the Hezbollah in the way they were attacking before the threats of a regional war happened. They're not doing anything really preemptively in dramatic fashion, which is sad and pathetic of the Israelis. Iran has not launched anything yet, and it's not clear when it will launch and what it'll exactly do. It is under intense international pressure not to do anything or to do something that is low-key or that only targets military facilities, that does not target anything civilian, so as not to give the Israelis a reason to counterattack. Because last time the Iranians attacked, nobody died, and Israel didn't do anything in response. They bombed some air defense system site. So everybody's begging them not to do it. The Jordanians are going there. The Americans have met several times. I mean, one of the most disgusting things going on right now is basically people in the West are basically saying, look, the real wild card in the Middle East is Bibi Netanyahu. He's the provocateur. God, they've already forgotten October 7th. They're forgetting the Hezbollah missiles into Israel every day. They're forgetting that, the Iran is behind October 7th and behind the Hezbollah. They're forgetting that Iran provides weapons to everybody. They forget all the terrorist organizations in Iraq and in Syria funded by Iran attacking. Netanyahu is the problem. And as you know, I'm no fan of Netanyahu. But it's just this mentality of capitulation, the mentality of weakness, the mentality of, we are the bad guys. Because that's what they're saying. We are the bad guys. The West is the bad guys. The people defending themselves, they're the bad guys. Anyway, so Iran's under a huge amount of pressure. It is in no rush to respond, partially because while it's waiting, it is receiving supposedly sophisticated weapon systems from the Russians, particularly S-400s, which is the second most advanced air defense system that the Russians had. I'm not too worried about it. I think the Israelis can handle the S-400s, but who knows what else the Russians are shipping them? Maybe better ballistic missiles, maybe hypersonics. I don't know. But the Russians are shipping weapons to Iran in exchange for the drones the Iranians are shipping to the Russians to fight Ukraine. So everybody's sitting on pins and needles waiting. Why Israel is giving its enemies the strategic advantage of determining the place and time and type of conflict, I have no idea. It is a massive sign of weakness, probably because America is demanding of it. But there has to be a point at which you say, I have to defend myself. This is what I have to do. All right, one more story coming out of the Middle East, and that is Hamas has appointed a replacement for Haniya, the leader of the Hamas that Israel killed, the political leader of Hamas that Israel killed in Iran a week or so ago. And they've appointed Sinwar as their new political leader. Now, Sinwar has been the leader all along. He is the leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. He really has been the decision maker. He's the guy who ultimately made the call on October 7th. He controls everything vis-a-vis Hamas. So this is just a recognition of the fact that he was always the leader anyway. But it is also a transfer of the center of gravity politically from Qatar to the Gaza. It's also I think a sign that Hamas is probably not going to agree to the latest negotiations for a ceasefire, which I think is good because I think a ceasefire would be awful. It also means that Israel now has to get him. The challenge, of course, with that is he's deep in a tunnel somewhere, surrounded by hostages. But Israel has no alternative but to get him. It's the only way it can win this. It's the only way it can end it. It's the only way it can be successful. Sinwar has to die. I think with Sinwar dying, the effort in Gaza will die. Now, there are a few other Hamas leaders who have to be killed along the way, but Israel has done pretty well with the military leaders. They've killed many of them, if not most. But a lot more of the fighters, a lot more of the leadership in Sinwar has to die, and some of the leadership in Qatar still has to die. But for them, there's more time. Sinwar is urgent, right? Battles in Gaza continue, that's on a daily basis. So I'll just note that, but nothing dramatic has happened recently. All right, finally, from Ukraine, some interesting news. I guess you'd call it interesting news. Ukraine has invaded Russia. They have. North of Kharkiv, in the northeastern part of Ukraine, northwest part, of the Russian border with Ukraine, Ukrainian forces have basically gone into Russia. They've overrun the border control, and they actually engaged in battles inside Russia. Now, it's not clear why they're doing this strategically. Obviously, it is humiliating to the Russians, humiliating to Putin. Some have argued that they're heading towards a nuclear power plant in Kursk. I don't know. And again, what will they do when they get there? Shut down electricity. They will. They also are in control now of the pipeline that drives gas through into Ukraine and on further into parts of Europe. But they had control over the gas line anyway because they had to go through Ukraine. So it's not clear exactly what strategic goal here. It could be an attempt to divert some of the supposedly 540,000 Russian troops that are sitting in Ukraine, maybe to come and defend Russia, and that will give them an opening to recapture land inside Ukraine. I don't know. But the reality is that there are ongoing battles right now inside Russia that where Ukrainian forces have basically invaded and taken territory. Maybe over time we'll figure out what strategically they would do. Now, I would have thought you go into Russia and then you go behind Russian lines and you cut off their supply lines into Donetsk. But the fact is that they've gone into Russia way north of those supply lines. So I don't think that's what the thinking is or that's what the plan is. I mean, maybe it will be, but at least right now it doesn't seem like that's what the Ukrainians have in mind. So I'm not sure what they have in mind. It'll be interesting to watch. What is interesting is Putin's response. Here's a headline for you. Putin accuses Ukraine of large-scale provocation at the Russian border. So Putin, who invaded Ukraine, who occupies big chunks of Ukraine, who's trying to occupy bigger chunks of Ukraine, who's annexed big portions of Ukrainian territory, is accusing Ukraine of a large-scale provocation. I mean, I really feel sorry for Putin. He's been provoked. It reminds me of the fact that, the West keeps accusing, the Israelis of escalation. And they don't want to give the Ukrainians tanks and F-16s or missiles or whatever because they're afraid of escalation. And it's like Putin is, Ukraine is escalating. What's this? How come Ukraine's escalating? He's almost talking to the West and saying, are you allowing the Ukrainians to escalate like this? Do you know what I might do? I'm not going to say it, but I might do something really, really bad. And do you know what I might do? Don't let them escalate. I mean, the enemies of the West play with the West like a plaything, just playing with them. And the West is just, pathetic. It's just pathetic. Don't stand up to them. We don't fight them. We don't resist them. We don't even stand up to them ideologically or verbally or PR-wise. We let them dictate, the Iranians, we play into them. Israel's the bad guy. Israel's the bad guy, even from its number one ally, the United States. The Israelis are the bad guys because they're provoking. They're escalating. Why are they provoking the Iranians? Why did they have to kill the head of Hamas? Why? October 7th? Yeah, but in Iran, why did you have to kill him in Iran? Because we could? Because Israel could kill him in Iran? I mean, it's very discouraging. The state of the West, you look at Great Britain, You look at what's going on there. You look at Iran and Israel and the U.S. and you look at Kamala Harris and the whole pathetic nature of American politics and Trump and yeah, pathetic. All right, where are we? Time for super chat. So first, thank you. I mean, we're nicely on schedule. We're only $38 away from reaching our goal for the second hour. So thank you guys for all the super chatters, and we'll get to you in a minute. But $38, we could probably make that in the next few minutes. So keep it going. I think now with Eric's $10, we're only down to $28. $28 to get to our goal for the second hour. And of course, given the number of questions you guys have, we're going to spill into the third hour. So start planning on getting us to the third hour targets. Before we get to the super chat, sponsors. We have, as you know, we have a number of sponsors for the Yaron Brook Show. John Bobbin, and we're going to try to fix the link after the show. But John Bobbin is a sponsor. He's an expert on diet and fitness and everything related to diet and fitness and health. And he tries to summarize and simplify a lot of the advice you get from many of the other kind of gurus around longevity and health and exercise and fitness and stuff like that. And he tries to simplify it and also to emphasize the personal nature of it. That is, it just because a study comes out that shows X, it just means that a majority of people responded to X in a particular way. But it doesn't mean that everybody is going to respond to it. So very much an emphasis on personalization, very much on testing what works for you, not what works on average, but what works for you. So I recommend you go listen to him. You can search him, John Bobbin, on YouTube, but there will be a link at the end of the show here that'll work. I don't think the link I have down there, I don't think it's working yet. I still haven't solved that problem. Also, the Ayn Rand Institute is a sponsor of the show. Ayn Rand Institute will be holding a conference in Brisbane, Australia, on December 6th to 8th. I will be speaking there. Nikos will be speaking there. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And I know what I'm speaking on. I want Nikos is speaking on. I think it's going to be really interesting and good. There'll be something for the beginners and the advanced. And we hope there'll be a lot of students there. We hope there'll be a lot of people interested in, just starting their interest in Ayn Rand. But I'm also hoping that many of you come. I know I have a following, somewhat of a following in Australia. I know many of you are not in Brisbane. You might be in, in Melbourne or in Sydney or even Perth. Perth is far away. But I hope you consider coming to the conference in Brisbane. There are scholarships, including travel scholarships. You can apply for such a scholarship on Ayn Rand, at the Ayn Rand Institute. So do aynrand.org/start here. aynrand.org/start here. And hopefully, if you do that, you can get a scholarship, expenses paid, and you can come and we can have a really, it could be a really good deal. The second thing I want to mention with regard to Asia generally, I'd say Asia generally. If we have anybody listening from Asia, maybe Singapore, maybe Tokyo, maybe Seoul, South Korea, maybe Taiwan, who knows? But certainly other places in Australia as well. If you are interested in organizing a talk for me in Asia or in a different city in Australia, maybe in Sydney or in Brisbane, maybe even Perth, although Perth is far, as I said, please let me know. I'd definitely be interested in, it may be coming. Maybe we can make something happen. On the way to Sydney, on the way to Brisbane, on the way back from Brisbane. So if you're interested in organizing a talk for me, let's say if you can get 30, 40, 50 people together for any kind of talk, could be business people. Ideally, it's students. Students would be ideal. But young people is also good. People interested in Ayn Rand, people unfamiliar with Ayn Rand. Whatever you think you can do, please let me know. So send me an email, yaron@yaronbrookshow.com. For scholarships, aynrand.org/start here. For potential talks, meetups, whatever, yaron@yaronbrookshow.com. Anywhere in Asia. Right. And then finally, alexepstein.substack.com. Don't forget, sign up for that Substack, the best voice from him, and you can even access an Alex AI. Yeah, alexepstein.substack.com. All right, let's jump over to your Super Chat questions. Let me just bring them in front of me like this. I can read them all nicely and clearly. And we got some good. Oh, before I do that, let me do the thanking of the stickers. You remember you can do stickers? You've got like 186 people watching right now. You can all do stickers to support the show, value for value, trader principle. If you're on there and you've never given to the Yaron Brook Show or you haven't given in a while, do a sticker or ask a question with the Super Chat. Okay, Gail, thank you for the sticker. Wes, $50 sticker. Thank you, Wes. Really, really appreciate it. We had Kim. Thanks for the sticker. Enric, John Parker, thank you. Mary Aline, thank you. And we've got, no, that's not. I think Apollo Zeus has bought some memberships, so some of you might be beneficiaries of the memberships. But Nate did a sticker. Thank you. I'm just making sure to thank everybody. Eric, thank you. And I think we've covered everybody. Yeah, we covered all the stickers, so let's go to the Super Chats. In the meantime, Lucinda has done a sticker. So is Carolina from Mexico. Thank you, Carolina. Really appreciate it. All right, let's start with David, who put up close to $100 in Costa Rican currency. And David says, did you catch Larry Summers on Bari Weiss's podcast? He was very positive and upbeat. How do you qualify his work as Treasury Secretary? Conventional, mainstream, uninspiring, not horrific, not very damaging. He was like an okay statist. He's and that's Larry Summers. He's a mixed economy, reasonable guy, but Keynesian influenced, and bad economics, bad economist. Has no appreciation for the real free market, has no appreciation for capitalism per se, is a traditional mixed economy, statist, big role for government in the economy, economist. So, and as Treasury Secretary, he was just okay. I mean, again, he wasn't horrific, is the best I can say about him. But they all are. I mean, Treasury Secretary is a manager within the mixed economy. And he was a decent manager within the mixed economy. He did nothing to get us out of the mixed economy. He did nothing to improve our stake in the mixed economy. He just managed the mixed economy okay. As best as we can say about him. All right, thank you. We've reached our goal for the second hour. So if you want to still ask questions and do stickers, we can work towards that third hour. How come the number of watching fluctuates so much? Right? Go to 100, 186, 130, 180, 161 now. It's weird. 318 on Twitter. That's great. That's a great number. All right, let's see. Lucinda. A quote from the novel version of Ideal I find enlightening. Ideal was a play, right, that Ayn Rand wrote, and there is a novel version that she never really completed, but it is, the manuscript of it is out there. David Sussin says he was very positive about free trade. That's true. It's a one thing, kind of, what do they call them? When they want to, say something negative about them. The neoliberal economists, the statist mixed economy, neoliberal economists were good on. The one thing they were good on was free trade. So there's no question on free trade. Larry Summers and I'd say a lot of center-left and center-right economists are very good on. They get it. Everybody gets it, really. It's just that the far left and the far right are stupid about it. They get it and then they ignore it. But everybody gets the benefits of free trade. Free trade is the one thing in economics that almost nobody disagrees about. Let me just see what David said. Don't bust my bubble, Yaron. He was parroting your talking points on the podcast. Which ones? Which talking points? On free trade. Absolutely true. He is a free trader. But then, is Janet Yellen not a free trader? I think she is. But she's also, a political realist. So she's a Treasury Secretary in an administration that's anti-free trade. So she supports them. Was Trump's Treasury Secretary, Cohen? Cohen was the chief economic advisor at some point. No, it was, what's his name? Paulson. No, Paulson was Bush's. Who was Trump's Treasury Secretary? Do you think Trump's Treasury Secretary wasn't pro-free trade? I'm sure he was. But again, he adapted to Trump. He adapted to Trump. So anybody who knows anything in economics is a free trader. So for Larry Summers, who's well known and a famous economist and everything, to be a free trader is not surprising and not a big deal. And, he comes from a liberal tradition that is very, very pro-free trade. And generally, Steve Mnuchin, that's right, Steve Mnuchin was Trump's Treasury Secretary, and he constantly tried to advocate for free trade within administration, and he had Leitzinger and Navarro who opposed free trade, and that was, and Trump sided with Leitzinger and Navarro. But again, you won't find an economist or anybody who understands economics or it plays a role in economics who's not a free trader. David Sussin says, he confirmed Milton Friedman's idea that inflation is a monetary policy issue. Yes, David, he's definitely a monetarist. There's no question about that. I have high standards. Larry Summers is a left of center economist. He's a better left of center economist than most, and his type of left of center economics is better than Trump-style economics, much better. Right, but he's good on monetary policy. He's good at inflation. He saw inflation coming. One of the few who did. He sees it as monetary phenomena. That's good. What's his solution? His solution is not private banking and a gold standard. His solution is not breaking up the Fed. His solution is, a rule-based monetary policy, which is better than what we have today, but is not a good solution, not the way I think about economics. Anyway, that's so I'm not as impressed as you, David, with Larry Summers, even though as compared to Biden economics or Trump economics, he's amazing. He's more intervention. He's an interventionist. Okay, Lucinda. Whoops, I never got to your question. A quote from the novel version of Ideal, which I started. Thought this was only before he entered the theater and after he left it, while he looked at her on the stage. So he thought she was just a woman and an actress. But he thought this only before he entered the theater. And after he left it, while he looked at her on the stage, it goes on, and I don't see what it is after as he looked at her on the stage. So I don't know. The quote reminded me, I mean, I assume while she was on the stage, he thought something more profound about her, even more profound than a woman and an actress. And Lucinda continues, the quote reminds me of all the people who read Rand and have a profound aesthetic experience with her work, but in the end don't have the courage to strive for heaven on earth and condemn the ideas into the realm of distant hopes. Yes, very good. Yeah, they are immersed in the aesthetic experience, which is an emotional experience for them, but they don't take it the next step. They don't do anything with it. They don't have the courage to live that life, to strive for that life, to really internalize the ideas that inspire them in the novel, to make them theirs, to make them part of their existence. That takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of thinking. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of focus, and they're not willing to do it. So, and that is sad. That is absolutely sad. Michael says, as flawed as Reagan and Thatcher were they the first wave of objectivism's impact? Yes, probably. I mean, there was an earlier wave in America. The first wave of objectivism's impact was doing away with the draft, with the military draft, which was done under Nixon, but had direct impact through Martin Anderson of Ayn Rand and Milton Friedman, who both advocated to get rid of the draft, and a number of people on the committee that made that recommendation were influenced by both Ayn Rand and Milton Friedman. That was the first wave. So I'd say the first wave of Ayn Rand influence on the culture was the 70s that led to the Reagan election. Augustinus, I don't know, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right. Thank you. Thanks for turning me onto the Dispatch magazine. I've been looking for a non-Trumpy conservative outlet. My pleasure. I like them. They're fairly good. Don't agree with them often. I'm more radical than them, obviously. But as you said, a non-Trumpy conservative publication is exactly what they are and exactly how they pitch themselves. And I think they do a good job as such. Thomas, love the beauty and greatness show. Thank you. Great idea to turn off news once a week and focus only on Simone or an art gallery, or put on 3 Beethoven string quartets and just listen or read a book about heroes in the past. Yes, I mean, one of my better recommendations. Once a week, just make it a habit. No news, no depressing television. Do something explicitly focused on beauty, explicitly focused on achievement, on success. If you're going to watch a movie, watch an inspiring one. Don't watch Breaking Bad. This is not the day for Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad you can watch when you do the news and you're already depressed. David, can you expand a little more on what you were saying about a potential recession in the U.S.? Is that a now thing or more of a long-term potentiality? Look, I'm terrible at timing these things, so don't hold me to any of this. But I've been expecting a recession for a long time now, since the Fed really raised interest rates. I think everybody was expecting a recession. Most economists were. The U.S. economy managed to avoid one, I think to some extent because of in-migration, to some extent because of the flexibility of the U.S. economy, to some extent because of the kind of investments into AI and other things. But high interest rates have stayed high for a pretty long time now, and they're definitely having an impact on home buyers, on consumers, and on businesses. And there are some signs that the U.S. economy is slowing. It didn't slow in the first quarter. The first quarter still showed, or the last quarter, showed 2.8% GDP growth, which is pretty high, much higher than I would have expected, and most economists expected. But it does look like employment is softening. Unemployment is up above 4.3. It was 3.4 just a few months ago. And I think, and it wouldn't surprise me if the high interest rates impact business activity and slow things down, even if only a little bit. And so you could see a real economic slowdown. Don't expect anything deep. I don't see anything structural unless you start seeing business bankruptcies. I think the structural thing, ultimately, there's still these zombie companies that have not yet gone bankrupt, and I don't know how they're surviving. But I still believe that there's a bunch of zombie companies out there. Companies that, if they had to refinance their debt right now, couldn't do it because of higher interest rates. And I think the stock market was spooked last week because of the numbers, the employment numbers, and because of some of the other, the Intel numbers and some other numbers coming out that suggested things were slowing down. The Apple numbers. So high tech, the tech industry. Look, the tech industry is the driver of the U.S. economy. And if that falters, and it looks like it might, I mean, does Tesla really have a future with Chinese competition the way it is I think there's a question mark on that. So there are real challenges. And would I be surprised if there were a recession? No. In the next few months? No. Long term, my prognosis hasn't changed. Long term, I expect stagnation. I expect very slow economic growth over the long run. With some periods maybe a faster growth in recessions, but generally slow economic growth in the long run. Alexis, why does it feel the world is getting dumber lately? Shorter attention spans, more tribal, angrier. Am I getting old and cranky, or is there something going on, or is it just the result of a long-term trend? Well, something's going on. What's going on is the result of a long-term trend. It's not just you getting older and crankier, and it's not even me getting older and crankier. It's reality. It's the long-term trend. The mixed economy has a shelf life. It cannot go on forever. And even during that shelf life, even while it's going on, it has real consequences. And those real consequences, so Ayn Rand described the mixed economy as devolving into gang warfare. That is, gang warfare at the economic level. Because the government plays a bigger and bigger role in the mixed economy, it's redistributing wealth in a variety of different ways. It's taking wealth from some and giving welfare. That's one way. But there's also a lot of what's called corporate welfare, of subsidies and favors and all kinds of, I'm giving land leases to mine to these companies, but not to those companies, to those oil companies, but not to others. The government becomes this favor machine and dollar and money machine. And then what happens is all of us are either people getting money from the government or paying money from the government or both. We're constantly looking and saying, wait a minute, those people over there are getting my money. I should get my money. So I'm going to lobby them and I'm going to fight them. And I don't like them because they're taking my money and I don't like those groups. And as a consequence, we form groups of pressure groups, special interest groups. And we go and we try to grab as much as we can. And the people who don't grab, who can't grab, get left behind. They're ignored. Maybe it's the working class in England. They don't have a good lobby. They haven't managed to influence the central government to give them favors. They would benefit from freedom, but there is no freedom. There's a mixed economy, so they're suffering. And they're not getting any favors. And they're frustrated and they're angry. Same thing is happening in America. Same thing is happening in France. You saw the yellow jackets. Wait a minute. What's up with this climate change agenda? That's a Paris elite agenda. We need our diesel. We're farming. We're in the countryside. We need to do stuff. Well, what the hell's going on? You can't do that. And that was the thing in the farmers protests in the Netherlands and all over Europe. This isn't our agenda. What are you doing? Your pressure group is taking from us. They're taking our livelihood. They're taking our life away from us. You can't do that. So what it does is it creates gangs, it creates collectives, it creates tribes who are now fighting each other for the spoils of the mixed economy, the spoils of the free part of the economy, which is what's being sucked in order to provide for the unfree parts of the economy. So it's inevitable that it creates gang warfare, collectivism, tribalism. And this is why Trump and Le Pen and the right wing in Europe and the riots in UK, it explains all of that. All of that is explained by the necessary outcome of the mixed economy. And it also explains the rise of a wacky left. But the wacky left is disintegrated. The wacky left is so stupid that most common people don't buy it. So they resent the wacky left. So they're looking for somebody else who's tribal, but who might have more interest in economic issues than trans issues and gay issues. They don't care about that stuff. So the right has become economically socialist, but hateful of the social issues, and the working class is gravitating towards the right as a consequence. But it's all, again, this, I mean, even the gay rights and the trans and all of this, if the government wasn't involved, if the government didn't have clinics, if the NHS wasn't transitioning kids, if gay rights didn't involve the government making certain decisions that benefit or didn't benefit gays, people wouldn't care about as much about private decisions of businesses or individuals. But it's the government making these decisions. It was the government that instituted policies that led to this awful policy towards transitioning kids in the UK. And that creates resentment and hatred of these elites who are doing this kind of crap, and again, creates a pressure group, a social pressure group. So it's the trend. And I don't see anything on the horizon to make it get better. It seems to be the direction, and it looks like it's going to get worse before it gets better, because there's nobody in politics today that is actually an advocate for something better. It just isn't. You saw the conservatives in England. You saw, I don't know, Macron in France. It's pathetic that Macron in France is the free market guy. I mean, he's a left of center statist. But relative to the rest, he's not insane when it comes to statism. So he's the good guy. I mean, how crazy is that? Alexis is originally from France. I'm using a French example. Anyway, so I think it's a long-term trend. And you see growing influence of altruism, right? On for example, in Israel, right? So Israel used to be much more strident in its defense of itself. But grinding, the impact of altruism grinds away. And I just watched a video of an Israeli professor who was part of a committee that wrote the manual for the Israeli military, kind of the code of conduct for the Israeli military. The document that reflected the spirit of the Israeli military. This is a few years ago. And he was on this podcast where he proudly asserted that he and his fellow professors were responsible for the fact that victory is not the primary focus of the Israeli military. That they fought, including victory as the goal. I can't remember what terminology they used instead. Something pathetic and weaselly. This is an Israeli professor, philosopher, ethicist. And basically, it was all just war theory type language. So yeah, altruism, the impact of it, the constant grinding away at Enlightenment values and grinding away at the good guys weakens everybody. And then the mixed economy creates these tribal gangs. And you have altruism with tribal mentality. Nothing good comes of that. But that's what's happening. It's happening everywhere in the West. Everywhere in the West. Sorry, Alexis. I have no good news today. Lucinda for $50. Yaron, the quote continues in the two 10-euro questions I sent after the first 20 ones. Okay, let's find the two $10. Okay, there it is. See, it's on a different column, so I don't see them. So let's do the quote again. Wait. He thought that she was just a woman and an actress. But he thought this only before he entered the theater and after he left it. While he looked at her on the screen, he thought differently. He thought that she was not a human being at all. Not the kind of human being he'd seen around him all his life, but the kind no one ever knew and should. When he looked at her, it made him feel guilty, but it also made him feel young and clean and very proud. When he looked at her, he understood why ancient peoples had made statues of gods in the image of man. Yeah, that's a beautiful quote. It's so Ayn Rand, right? It's so Ayn Rand. This idea of greatness, this idea of the human potential, what's possible to man, of the greatness that is possible to man, and that is often reflected and only reflected in art. And when you look around you, the mediocrity of the people that we actually live with, the mediocrity of the people that we're surrounded with, just the dullness of the world in which we live as compared to the excitement and the thrill and the grandeur of the world that is possible, that is reflected in the best art, right? Certainly in the art of Ayn Rand. So that is a great quote and captures that Ayn Rand spirit regarding what is possible to man, what is possible to all of us, really. So Lucinda, to remind you, she continued and said, the quote reminds me of all the people who read Rand and have a profound aesthetic experience with her work, but in the end don't have the courage to strive for heaven on earth and condemn ideals into the realm of distant hopes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. They get that sense of, again, what's possible, the grandness of it all, but they can't actually bring it into their lives. They can't make it theirs. Whether it's courage, or whether it's laziness, or whether it's just lack of focus. They can't do it. They won't do it. They refuse to do it. Hunter, a $50 question. Thank you, Hunter. In North Dakota, during the oil boom before summer 2014, the flood of out-of-staters to the area for lucrative jobs was insane. Massive growth and prosperity locally. I was there. I am viewing this as an analogy to healthy immigration policy thoughts. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, there's no reason not to think of immigration on a national scale, on an international scale, the same as one thinks of migration on a national scale. So, for example, people flooded into North Dakota because of the oil boom. Huge jobs, huge opportunities. They paid well. You could make something of yourself in this land. Entrepreneurs went there to start businesses, to sell shovels to the oil business, right? I mean, that's from the gold rush. To sell the equipment, to provide food. People opened restaurants. And then, of course, the oil men came, and they came by the thousands to help drill for the oil. This is the fracking revolution. I know one of the entrepreneurs who made a fortune because he was one of the first frackers in North Dakota. And it was an exciting, thrilling period, and people came from other states. Well, that's great. And they made North Carolina flourish. And boom. And locals did incredibly well. They all got richer. Land prices went up. Local businesses did well. Everything got better. If you create an economy that is thriving and people from the outside come in, that's a good thing. That's a positive. It's not a bad thing. And of course, the people coming in are partially what make the economy thrive. Because the entrepreneurs who drilled for oil in North Dakota, who did the fracking, weren't North Dakotans. They didn't come from North Dakota. They were Texans. They were from out of state. They were from all over the place. And they made North Dakota what North Dakota became during that period. The same thing happens with immigrants today. They come to a place, they start businesses, they create business activity, they create economics. They are a positive economically, even illegal immigrants, because they work, they pay some taxes. Yes, some of them get paid cash. A certain percentage of them get paid cash. And then they spend that cash. But many of them pay taxes. A majority of them pay taxes. And they, for example, pay Social Security and they never withdraw from it. Medicare, they never withdraw from it. They also start businesses, employ people. They also take jobs, which Americans don't want to do, which increases the quality of all of our lives. And they consume stuff. They buy homes. They buy stuff, which creates economic activity. So immigration is a boom to an economy. I think it's what helped the U.S. economy in the last couple of years, in the last few years. But immigration and a healthy economy go hand in hand. And what we need is, we don't just need immigrants, we need to free up the economy. That's the primary thing we need. We need massive deregulation, we need freedom, economic freedom, and then with it, we need migration. Edward says, Trump said they're taking black jobs. To a black audience. He said migrants are taking black jobs, and the blacks look at them and said, what's a black job? Why is my job different than white job? What's a black job? I mean, he's such a moron. He really is. Yeah, I mean, that's Trump being the moronic Trump, which he is. But no, they don't take jobs. They add jobs. I mean, during this mass migration that came in of illegal immigrants, unemployment went down, job creation went up. I don't know whose job they were taking. They weren't taking anybody's job. They were creating new jobs. More jobs were being created. Charlie says, an argument for free market for the anti-immigration crowd could be that a free market culture would select for people that would be productive and even reduce immigration if that supply stopped existing. Yeah, but he wouldn't, right? Because everybody knows that it would be the exact opposite, right? Everybody knows that if the economy thrived, that would increase the demand for jobs, and that would increase the desirability of immigrating, that would increase the motivation to hire people who are immigrants, that would increase everything associated with immigration. So a booming economy would lead to more migrants, not less. Indeed, during the financial crisis, the best argument for recession and for financial crisis is if you hate immigration. So during the financial crisis, in the period between 2008 and 2015, 16, net migration into the United States was negative. More illegals left America than came in because there were no jobs. If there are no jobs, they leave. So for the 10 years or so, oh God. Why is this not working? All right, 1 second. I'll be right back. I'll be right back. 1 second. All right. Sorry about that. Let's see if this will work now. Give it a few minutes. All right, we'll just go on with audio until I can get the video back. Give me a second here. All right, let's see. So that was the argument about Charlie about immigration. All right, Paul. Well said, but depressing. The excuse and belief in egalitarianism is destroying the West. Yeah, and that origins of egalitarianism is, of course, altruism. Egalitarianism is just one manifestation of altruism. So, but yes, I think that's absolutely right. All right, thank you, Paul. Philosophy at Work is writing to maribbens, not to us. So this is just a Philosophy at Work using this as code. We need a powerful king in America who tells us what to do and keeps those damn immigrants away. We're going to take our Hobbes. They're going to take our Hobbes. They're going to take our Hobbes. I mean, that's what Hobbes argued. Is that the Hobbes you mean? Hobbes wanted a powerful king in America, so get rid of those damn immigrants. Thanks, guys. All right, Nate. What's your opinion of airline pilots? Productive members of society or just another overpaid union profession? Oh, I'm sure they're productive members of society. Are they overpaid? I don't think so. But I don't really know. I haven't really looked into it carefully. I don't think pilots are paid that much. I mean, from what I hear, pilots are not paid a huge amount. There's a lot of pilots. There's no shortage of pilots, and the bottom line is they're not paid that well. I know people who've left the profession because it wasn't paying that well. Given the hours, given the stress, given everything. Raymond, wouldn't self-interested people back away from fighting in wars unless they can't leave and your country is losing? Life over property. Well, no. I mean, what kind of life do you want to leave? A self-interested person doesn't just care about living, that is, as a, just as a biological being. A self-interested person wants to live as a rational being. He wants to live the full ability and have the choices. He wants to be free. And if that freedom is threatened, a self-interested person is going to fight for the freedom because that freedom is an enormous value to himself. So self-interest does not preclude fighting if the fighting is for your own freedom and for the lives of people you care about. If you know that the enemy, if they win, are going to rape and pillage through the people you love, your friends, your family, then wouldn't you want to defend them? Wouldn't you want to fight for them? That is, this idea that self-interest means this material has to be alive. There's certain circumstances where you don't want to be alive. You don't want to live in an unfree society. You don't want to live knowing that, you didn't try to protect your family and loved ones from evil. So self-interest, you have to think of self-interest as what really is in my self-interest. Is it in my self-interest to live under slavery? Is it in my self-interest to fight for my own freedom? Yes, of course. So you fight. Even if that fight is doomed to fail, you fight. Because fighting for freedom is better than dying a slave. Fighting for freedom is better than, living as a slave. Dying for freedom is better than, living as knowing that one didn't do one's best in trying to protect the people one loves. I don't understand this. All right. We'll solve this in other ways. All right, what else? Apollo Zeus. How to deal with self-doubt and how it relates to the objectivist theory of certainty. God. I mean, how to deal with self-doubt is, I think a lot of that is more psychology than anything else. So find a good psychologist and try to figure out what the source of the self-doubt is. So I think that would be my best advice, is find a professional who knows how to drill down into why you're feeling the self-doubt, what is causing it. And then fight against that. Josh, I wish Waltz hurts in Wisconsin among moderates. I think Waltz hurts in Wisconsin among moderates, particularly women who have Republican husbands. Seems like he is viewed by moderates as exacerbating issues in Minneapolis. I think so too. I don't understand the choice. It's the worst choice I could have thought for her. It just doesn't help this choice in terms of trying to get her elected, if that's what anybody wants. Alexis, enough with the uplifting news you're on. I'm trying, Alexis, sorry. Michael says, if you're corrupt, it's impossible to... If you're corrupt, it's impossible to resonate and absorb the objectivist philosophy, and a solid majority of the population are corrupt. I don't know if that's fair to the majority of the population. Certainly, our intellectuals are corrupt, and a solid majority of the population follows our intellectuals. I don't know. I don't think the country could be in as good a shape, in spite of everything as it is, if a solid majority was corrupt. I think a solid majority is overly influenced by their intellectuals. It's always the case, and the intellectuals are thoroughly corrupt. I don't blame the common person. Do you think almost getting assassinated shook Trump out of his narcissistic delusions, or is he too far gone? He's way too far gone. Are you crazy? He was completely back to his normal, crazy, narcissistic way of doing things. In his speech in front of the convention, and since then, he's just the same old Trump. Nothing has changed. Zero. If anything, he's more conspiratorial and going to be more. Michael, was Ayn Rand the only new source of rationality since Aristotle? No, of course not. God, Thomas Aquinas brought reason into the Catholic Church. You have other thinkers who elevated rationality and reason. And of course, you've got science. You got Galileo, and you've certainly got Newton. So no, there's lots of sources of rational thinking, of rational ideas you couldn't have had progress without it. What about all the progress that was made post-Enlightenment or even before the Enlightenment? So no, there are many, many sources. Ayn Rand is the first philosopher who is radically pro-reason and pro-egoism, and has a proper conception of reason. That is true. She's the first after Aristotle for that, but you can't just say source of rationality. Michael, is the right answer for the wrong reason worse than the wrong answer because you're covering up your lack of understanding? Yes, and it doesn't allow you to understand. It doesn't get, if you make a mistake, then you can learn from it. If you don't even realize you've made a mistake, if you have no conception of the mistake, you can't learn from it. You can't improve. You can't set yourself in a proper direction. Michael, is Kamala Harris only going to gain more steam? Is there a 50% chance she'll win? I think right now her chances, according to I think the betting markets, or according to some of the pollsters, is somewhere just over 50%, like 52, 53%. So it's a toss-up right now. But is she going to pick up more steam? I don't know. I don't think so. But again, the only person who could lose to Kamala Harris, the only Republican who could lose to Kamala Harris, is Donald Trump. any other Republican the Republicans had nominated would have beaten her easily, I think. All right, Michael. Does adversity not make you who you are, but reveal you to yourself? Well, I mean, it doesn't make you who you are. It certainly reveals, but you can also make yourself through adversity, right? So it's not the only thing through which you make yourself, but you certainly can face adversity and change as a consequence. So it doesn't necessarily just reveal who you are. You can face adversity and say, you know, I could deal with it this way. This is maybe how I would have dealt with it usually. But I'm going to rise above that, and I'm going to deal with this other way. So adversity can make you who you are. It can also just allow you to mire in who you already are. It depends. Again, what makes you who you are, the choices you make. Facing adversity or facing any other choice. Michael, under laissez-faire, would most people be able to pay cash for a home? This 30-year mortgage business seems like a product of statism. No. 30-year mortgage is a beautiful thing, and it's a product of the free market. Absolutely. Why would you want to pay cash for a home? And if we were rich enough to pay cash for a home, wouldn't you want a bigger, nicer, more expensive home and get a mortgage to fill in the gap? A mortgage is a beautiful thing. It allows you to buy something today and pay for it over time as you make the money to be able to afford it. So let's say today, you know, in the future, you know, a young person can have $1 million. But then he'll want a $3 million home. Why settle for $1 million home? He's richer. So you can put $1 million down and get a mortgage for $2 million. So now, as I've said in the past, home prices should be going down in a free market. Free market, pretty much all prices go down. So there's no reason for a price to keep going up. But no, I think mortgages, credit cards, auto credit generally, debt generally, is an amazing innovation that allows for consumption smoothing, which allows you to benefit from the fact that you're going to earn money in the future that you can spend today. And I think that's a good thing, not a bad thing. It's a rational thing, and it's a product of the market. Michael, if you had to choose, would you rather live in Texas or Florida, and why? I don't like Florida. It's too flat and boring and filled with old people. I'd rather live in Texas. Texas is more interesting, more colorful, more vibrant, I think. And just scenery-wise, I think better. And more dynamic. If you think about high tech in Austin, finance and oil business in Dallas, Houston, manufacturing, oil business, chemicals, everything in Houston. It's a much more exciting place, I think, than Florida. Michael, a billionaire being interviewed said, I don't think I'm better than you. I just want more out of life than you. Is this a legitimate perspective? No, because wanting more out of life is being better. Everybody should want more out of life. Everybody should want to maximize their own life. That's what it means to live. So what he's saying is, I don't want to be average. I don't want to settle. That's virtuous, right? That is a part of virtue, right? And as such, makes him better in some important way. So he is better by virtue of he wants more from life. David, another $50. Thank you, David. If Democrats need to win by a large margin to defeat Trumpism, isn't the corollary also true that Trump needs to win big in order to validate MAGA ideology? No, because, MAGA ideology MAGA ideology will not be a big governing ideology under Trump. Trump is too divisive a character. It does need, you're right that it needs to win big to be validated, as a governing ideology. But what Trump winning, however he wins, or by losing by a little bit, means, it validates MAGA as the ideology of Republicans, not as a big ideology that unifies the country, that brings the country together. And it's not that Dems need to win by a large margin to defeat Trumpism. It's that Republicans have to lose by a big margin to defeat Trumpism. It's not the Dems' victory that is the focus. It's the Trumpism's loss that is the focus. That is the essence. So if Trumpism loses by a lot, that will mean Trumpism is over and the Republicans will have to look for something different. But if Trump loses by a little bit, they'll say, oh, but we were so close. And if Trump wins, they'll say, see, we won. And that'll keep Trumpism alive. So, and that's all the validity they want. It doesn't need the validity of a big victory, 60% of Americans, huge. No, it just needs to win enough that it will continue to be the ideology of the Republican Party. That's the point. And that means as long as Trumpism is the ideology of the Republican Party, it means there's no real opposition party to the Democrats, not from the perspective of freedom. And that's really the issue. I hope that makes sense. Eric, Will Durant said, quote, when Athens' most famous philosopher, Plato, could find so little to say for freedom, Greece was ripe for a king. Could the same be said about today's famous Western intellectuals? Yes, absolutely. And this is what Leonard Peikoff talks about in Ominous Parallels. It's what Leonard Peikoff talks about in Dim Hypothesis. Yeah, we're ripe for a dictator. It's right in front of us. We're definitely, our culture's ripe for a strong man. I don't think completely ripe. I think it still needs a little bit of ripening, but certainly we're heading in that direction. When we have so little to say about freedom. Yeah. So I agree with Durant, and I agree with you that it applies to the modern context. Absolutely. Apollo, what's the cost of food, accommodation, and other stuff in Barcelona relative to the US or the UK? Food is quite a bit cheaper in terms of, unless you go to, Michelin-star restaurants. Supermarket food, grocery store food, restaurant food, regular restaurant. What else? I don't know what cars or stuff like that cost. Planes in Europe are much cheaper. Airplane travel in Europe is cheaper than the US. Rent, I don't know how to compare it to, but it strikes me that rent here is cheaper than it would be in a big American city, in Barcelona. So I think cost of living here, just our impression as of now, is quite a bit cheaper in Barcelona than it is in California or New York or somewhere like that. I don't know to compare it to a non-major city, right? But food is definitely cheaper and really good. Fruits and vegetables here are fantastic. And the restaurants are amazing. Some of the best food anywhere. Michael, as much as it will pain me to hear Kamala Harris crackle for 4 years, it will give me a sense of Schadenfreude to see Trump lose to the bimbo. Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's also true that if he wins, it'll give me Schadenfreude. It will give me a positive sense to see the left implode. So either way, either way, I think that I will feel that sensation about the other side. Give me a second. That did not work. That'll work. All right, that worked. All right, let's see. Next question. Equal to reality. Have you heard a B Corp movement? If so, what are your thoughts? B Corporation is a corporation set up not for profit. So it's a corporation. A C Corp is a corporation set up for profit, set up to maximize shareholder wealth, for shareholder well-being. It's owned by shareholders. A B Corp, in advance, is set up for some social, in quotation marks, purpose, some non-profit purpose. They also want to make money, but that's not their primary motivation. I'm fine with them. I think at least B Corps are honest. I wouldn't invest in one ever, but I think they're honest. They tell you exactly what they plan to do with your money as an investor. What I dislike is regular corporations saying, oh, we're for stakeholders, or we love to give a lot of money for charities, or we are sending $100 million to Black Lives Matter, or we support XYZ. I mean, in my view, regular corporations should not give any money to charity. They should not be involved in philanthropy. Their only goal is to maximize shareholder wealth, and shareholders can then decide if they want to give to charity. So a B Corp is fine because they're honest about it. And then you can decide whether you want to support their cause in addition to hopefully making money or not. Michael, is the human psyche complicated and not susceptible to easy analysis? Yes. Yes. The way our subconscious and consciousness work, our psychoepistemology, all of that is complicated, influenced by all kinds of factors that involve our decision making, our values, and it's hard. It's hard to undo, and this is why psychology is difficult. It's difficult, and why it's dangerous to psychologize. Mary Aline, Lucinda's quote reminds me of the look Winans' valet saw on his face after he's visited his art gallery, a look of suffering, but he looked 10 years younger. Yes, the art inspired, but once he left it, he was back into the real world. That's a great, I'd forgotten that scene. That's really good. Lucinda, it's amazing how powerful Rand's writing is, even when in the form of an unedited manuscript she wrote at the age of 29. Yes. And isn't it amazing that modern intellectuals complain that Ayn Rand can't write? She's a terrible writer, when her writing is so beautiful and so powerful. So powerful. Charlie, assuming a free objectivist society, would deep abject hatred for people who want to destroy your way of life be warranted? Yes. Yes, they want to destroy your life. You should absolutely hate them. It doesn't mean it consumes you. It doesn't mean you go after them. It doesn't mean you spend any energy on it. But yes, hate is good for those who want to destroy life. Absolutely. Andrew, did you cover the antitrust ruling against Google, the irrationality of those laws and their disrespect for private property have struck again? I did not. It was on my list and I didn't put it down on paper. I thought it several times that I was going to talk about it, but I never actually got to talking about it. I will on one of my next updates. I will definitely do an analysis of the Google case. I've got some stuff to say about it. I had prepared stuff to say about it in my head, but it didn't make it onto my outline. Paul, where would the Republican ideology have gone had Trump been eliminated? Had Trump been eliminated when? I mean, killed, assassinated, you mean? Hard to tell. I think it would have gotten worse. I think it would have gotten worse because it would have justified all of Trump's conspiracy theories. It would have justified their view of the world, and I think somebody much worse than Trump would have arisen out of the ashes. I think it would have got a lot worse. What percentage of income does the average Brit spend on food? It's an interesting statistic. Didn't think of this measure until Tucker went to Russia, and you pointed out they spend 30% on food over there. I don't know. I don't know. We can look. UK income average spent on food. Let's see if we can get a quick Google answer to that. Yes. In 2022, an average household spent 11.8% of their expenditure on food and non-alcoholic drinks. That's cheating. In UK, alcoholic drinks is much of the food that they consume, while the lowest 20% of households by disposable equivalent income, it's 14.8%. So 11.8%. That's not high. And if you put in US, 11% in the US. So UK is about the same as the US. A little bit higher. A little bit higher. Yeah. And obesity in the US and the UK is pretty high. So they buy a lot of food with that. Tessa, do you think Trump and Vance can get along for 4 years? No, I don't think so. Really get along. All right. Yasser, thank you for the sticker. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. We made our 3-hour goal, and you had lots of good hour, the second half of the third hour. Yeah, so the same in the UK. So David says U.S. stat has gone down, used to be 16% 10 years ago. Yeah, in the UK, it's gone down quite a bit as well. So both countries have gotten, still getting wealthier in spite of everything. That is, your basics are consuming less and less of your income. That's a good sign of getting wealthier. All right, everybody, I will see you, I don't know when. Sometime this week, I expect. But really appreciate you joining us this show. We had a great turnout for the show. Don't forget, you can support the show on Patreon. I love Patreon, or on yaronbrookshow.com/membership, which is PayPal. And that's a monthly support, and that's a great way to support the show on an ongoing basis. But thank you for joining me. Thank you for sticking around, and I will see you all in the days to come.